my skin so gorgeous. We thank the life gorgeous. Thank the life gorgeous. I love the life gorgeous. Its torso is so tight.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Life Gorgeous. My name is Craig Kilborn, and this is where I share my magical life in hopes of improving your life. We are joined by a special guest. He is the Frank DeFord of his generation. The Curry Kirkpatrick of his generation. John Krawczynski from The Athletic. Nice to see you, sir.
Nice to see you, my friend. Funny fact, Frank DeFord spoke at the graduation commencement at the University of St. Thomas when I was a junior. So I went and had dinner with him, and it was a great time.
You had dinner with Frank DeFord when you were in college?
I did when I was a junior at St. Thomas. Yep, at the St. Paul Hotel. So one of your favorite spots. So
yes, the St. Paul Grill. So did you know back then you were going to be a writer?
Yes. Yep. I was on the path. I was on the path from when I was in 7th grade, probably.
Right.
Like that was it. So, yep. And it was tunnel vision the whole way. And so I got that meeting, and it was a formative experience for me for sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, John writes for The Athletic. He used to be a longtime AP writer. He's based in Minnesota. He covers the sports teams, including the Timberwolves, which we're going to talk about. But we have to talk about the big news with the Vikings that happened recently. Dalton Reisner.
What a get, right? We weren't sure if he was going to sign or not, but
dragging out. It was dragging out. No, we all thought it was going to happen with Justin Jefferson. Quickly, your thoughts? It happened this morning.
Yeah, it did happen. It happened this morning. We're recording this Monday morning, and $140 million largest non-quarterback guarantees. So good for Justin Jefferson. He earned it. Absolutely, he deserves it. And the Vikings knew the whole way. Like there's just you just have to pay a guy that talented. And so I always anticipated that it was going to get done, but it was hanging out there for a little while. It's just like, come on, guys, when's this going to happen?
Well, I've always liked him. I like his attitude. It's a better attitude than Randy Moss, who the Vikings had. But I guess there's a thought process of, they lose Kirk Cousins. He doesn't want to have any down years, Justin. So there's pressure on the quarterback situation in Minnesota, and it's nice that he stayed there despite the question mark at quarterback.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was wondering that myself. You're going into your prime years as a receiver. Like, are you going to want to be the guy who helps a rookie, JJ McCarthy, who kind of maybe endures some of the Sam Darnold era till that's over, whatever it is? Is that going to be something that Justin Jefferson was interested in doing? I think $140 million will make you interested in a lot of things. But I do also think that Justin Jefferson likes it in Minnesota. I think he has confidence in Kevin O'Connell and the offense that they've built around him. And so I think there's a general belief in the infrastructure with the Vikings. If it was a shakier situation from a leadership perspective, maybe Justin Jefferson looks at doing something else. But I think that this was a vote of confidence in the team in general, for sure.
John, why does your fellow journalist, Mike Florio, say the things he does about trading Justin Jefferson, the Vikings thinking about trading him? Why does he do that?
I think some people really need to get off-season clicks and really need to get attention. And I think Mike, in particular, really delights in finding unique angles and trying to kind of push the envelope in another way. And sometimes it works out for him and sometimes it doesn't, but he's built an incredible career for himself. Good for him. But I just never thought that was, certainly his theory that the Vikings were going to trade up, draft Malik Neighbors, and trade Justin Jefferson. I just never saw that as a viable option. Certainly the people who are embedded in reporting this, Alec Lewis at The Athletic and others, never really bought into that as well. So, sometimes you say things to get a rise, and I think that was one of those cases.
Do you laugh at him or roll your eyes, or what is your reaction when someone does that?
I mean, in general, I try to just like not pay much attention to it. Now, it obviously it comes onto my timeline, and I get questions about these things when this happens. And so when there's something that has some veracity to it, I will try to address it, and I'll try to really kind of give it the thought that needs to, and certainly balance it with what I've heard or reported or things like that. And then there's other ones that you just do let go. But that one in particular, I think was kind of a little more on the far-fetched variety. And so that was one that I just didn't really spend a whole lot of time addressing or worried about. It's like, come on, man, this is not going to happen.
Okay, let's stay on the Vikings briefly here. I've been following the team since 1970. We've always been talented. I do like the direction we're going. I find it cathartic that we've moved on from Kirk Cousins. The Vikings are picked to finish 4th in the tough NFC North with Green Bay, Chicago, Detroit. I guess it would be Detroit winning, Green Bay 2nd, Chicago 3rd, Vikings 4th. I always look at the schedule. We have a tough schedule, tougher than Chicago's. We now, again, like we did with Zim, we have to fly to Seattle on the road. First question, what's your prediction for the record this year for the Vikings?
It's kind of hard to predict without knowing who's going to play a quarterback. I obviously want to see that, but as it stands right now, I do think that I think they're the 3rd or the 4th best team. I think that maybe I think Chicago, the hype might be a little bit too much for them right now. That might be a little bit overboard. I do love a lot of the changes that the Vikings have made defensively, some of the additions that they've made. Getting Jefferson back is great. We'll see what happens at quarterback. But I just think that it's hard to look at this division and look at Detroit and Green Bay and not say that they're more talented and better right now. They have more proven quarterbacks. They're they're I think more balanced on both sides than the Vikings are. But if I have to say right now, with my with an ability to change it, I would say 8 and 9 in 3rd place.
I'll take 9 in a heartbeat.
Okay.
But do you look at the schedule? I do it every year and I get frustrated. I get frustrated with how tough the schedule is. And I know people say, well, you can't really predict how these teams are going to be each year. And I understand that, but some things you can predict. Does it bother you? Don't you think they have a tough schedule?
I mean, they do. And I think a lot of it is because in the past, you had 2 wins against Detroit, no problem. You had at least 1 win against Chicago, even though they never play well in Soldier Field. And so the ability to pad your victory total with at least 3 of those victories, it was real for a long, long time in this division. And now I don't think that's the case anymore, which makes it even more difficult. And, then you look at how their non-conference or their out-of-division opponents stack up. And, sometimes they do draw the short straw and they get some bad luck involved with some of that as well. But, I think Zim has said it. KOC has said it. You got to play the schedule that's in front of you, and maybe a couple of those teams will fall off and others will rise up. But I just think that they are now, this used to be one of the weaker divisions in the league.
Yes.
And I don't think that's the case anymore. And that's going to be a real challenge for these guys going forward.
Okay. Quarterback. I'm pulling for Sam Darnold. I want him to have a Baker Mayfield type year. I like his talent. How long do you think he'll play this year? Could it be the entire season?
I think it could be, Craigers. And I think that you could argue, I think that would be the best case scenario for the Vikings, is that he plays well enough. And maybe that means they're in the 9 or 10 win kind of pace that way. Because if they're 6, 7, 8 wins, maybe it's like, maybe you pull the plug on him and go to McCarthy earlier, middle of the season or so. But if Sam Darnold can come in, hey, he's got weapons around him. He's got a quarterback-friendly head coach. If this works out enough to allow him to play for an entire season and let McCarthy sit back get bigger, but get stronger, get a better understanding of the league, of the offense, all this stuff. I think that would be outstanding. Will it be able to happen? I'm not sure. We have not seen Darnold do it at a consistent level anywhere. He had a little bit of a flash with the Panthers. We were like, maybe there's something there. So I'm intrigued by him. I want to see it. And I do think this is his best opportunity to have a good season.
Absolutely.
So I think it's a very real possibility that he plays the entire year. And I would suggest that would be the best case scenario for the Vikings.
Okay, with JJ McCarthy, they have the OTAs. I'm hearing people talk about his arm. It looks good. It's coming off of his hand. He's slinging it. Sam Bradford, I like to talk about because he could sling the ball with the bad knees. But he was one of my their quarterbacks. I like, Jeff George and these different guys that could throw.
Wasn't he the greatest? Watching him sling that thing.
So it has to be premature. Can you tell anything about JJ McCarthy yet or not?
I don't think so, Craig. Fairness and disclosure with the Wolves in the playoffs, I did not go down to the practices yet with the Vikings, so I haven't seen him with my own eyes. I've talked to plenty of people who have, and the initial impressions are good. Like he does have some zip with the ball coming out of his hand. He looks to have a good air about him. But when you're throwing to guys in shorts with no contact, with no rush around you, anyone can look great. So I'm always kind of sit back and wait and see. I will say this. My dad and I grew up kind of more as Michigan fans. And so I watched him a ton in college. And what beyond what you see from him throwing the ball, and I know that the Wolverines ran the ball all the time. And so you're wondering what he's capable of doing. I would always just watch him, Craig, on the sideline when things were not going well for Michigan. And it just never looked like he was rattled. Like he always looked like, I've got this. We're going to figure this out. Stick with me, guys. We'll get to where we need to go. And I loved that about him. It just seems like he has a presence about him that shines through. And that's what I love in a quarterback. So we'll see how that translates. But that's the thing that I'm actually most excited about with McCarthy, kind of, as we get to know him a little bit.
Rich Eisen agrees with you.
He sure does.
He loves them. So that's good. Well, I'm excited. I do like KOC. I love Brian Flores, and I'm so glad my favorite Viking, Harrison Smith, is still playing. So it should be an entertaining season. Timberwolves pride. Great season. Still can't believe we won Game 7 at Denver. But let's start with what happened against Dallas. What are your thoughts on what happened against the Mavericks?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk to the guys after Game 5, I think it was clear to me that many of the Timberwolves players were not ready for what it takes to play deep into May and into June. This was their first experience doing it. And not just physically, Craig, but I think mentally this team was a little bit toast by the time they got to Dallas. And so now you play against a savant like Luka Doncic, who absolutely has every answer to what you're going to throw at him. And I just think that they lost the chess game in terms of Luka and Kyrie could get easy shots for Dallas whenever they wanted. And meanwhile, I think Anthony Edwards, being as young as he is, Naz Reid, a bunch of these guys, they did not know how to get their own easy shots. It was so much harder for them to generate looks offensively against Dallas than it was for Dallas to do it against them.
That's interesting because I've heard Ant say that it's so easy for Karl Towns to score, but I've pointed out to people, and I'm a Cat fan, but he doesn't. There are a few things he doesn't do, and that's 3 dribbles, pull up, jump shot. He doesn't create his jump shot. It's usually spot up shooting, and then the drive to the lane, to the hoop, potential offensive foul, etc. He used to do jump hooks at the beginning of his career down low, automatic, but they double team him. They don't post him up that much. But it is more laborious, if that's the proper word. You're the writer here, to get some hoops for the Wolves. Here's the other thing. After the emotional Game 7 win at Denver, it was a Sunday. We opened up at home against Dallas on a Wednesday, and I said, I think we're going to not win game one, but maybe win the series. It was kind of like that Vikings Minneapolis Miracle where we win that game and then we go and we get spanked in Philly. It took a lot out of us against Denver, and the big mistake was game 2, which we needed to win. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Craig, I couldn't agree more. I was in Philadelphia after the Miracle game, and they got flattened by the Eagles, and I talked to a couple of Vikings officials or within the front office afterward, and one of the guys just said we needed another week. Like we just needed another week, and I do think that was the case. The most disappointing thing I think out of the series was certainly game 2, but even game 1. Both of them were there to be had.
Absolutely.
And, that's what I said with Barrero as well. This was not a case. Game 5 was rough, but the series in general was not like 41 donut, was not like, the NFC Championship against the Eagles where they just got wiped out. This was a very hard fought, close series that had they had it go their way in 1 and 2, but particularly 2, I think it changes the entire complexion of the series.
Yeah.
And I think it injects a little bit more belief and energy into the Wolves if they're in that spot. But when they're down 3-0, it's just a mountain to climb. And I do think the other thing that factors in, including the emotions coming off of game 7, is I think that if you give truth serum to a lot of the Wolves players, they thought, hey, we just beat Jokic on his home floor in game 7. This is going to be the hardest thing that we do in these playoffs. I think that's what it was. And I think there was an underestimation of what Dallas was and what Luka was, and it caught him.
Yeah, nobody knew. We beat Dallas 3-1 regular season, but they were a different team. Not everyone was playing. And you beat Denver, and you go, we just did it. We just beat the best team in basketball. I heard people say, that Denver would beat Dallas. If Minnesota hadn't beaten Denver would beat Dallas in the Western Conference Finals. Now, I don't know if that's true because I can't tell how good Dallas is. I will be rooting for them in the finals. And my understanding is the Celtics are favored. I've always had a lot of respect for the Celtics the last few years, but now I'm irritated that they had such an easy route to the finals. They weren't tested. So Luka's amazing, very enjoyable to watch. I think he's cut down his whining here in the playoffs, just like Ant cut down his whining, which I enjoy because we don't want Scott Foster to take over, which brings me to the arrogance of Scott Foster. You guys had an article on him because you guys are linked with the New York Times. Is he arrogant, Scott Foster, the referee?
Yes, 100%. You talk to coaches, and not just Wolves coaches, but coaches around the league, and they will tell you that it is almost impossible to get Scott Foster to overturn any calls that you challenge. Like he just will not do it. And I'll tell you, there was a moment. What was it? It was game 4. It was possible. Yeah. The game 4 that he called for in Dallas, and
Finchie waved when did this and got a technical.
Yes. But before the technical, I think even they did a challenge. And
it was the steal by Ant, and Stan Van Gundy said hands part of the ball, and it looked like a good steal, and they said it was on the wrist.
Right. Yep. So Foster told them it was, if I can get it into he said, this is part of the ball, this is not part of the ball. And so, but that's the kind of thing that happens. And he looked at them like they had 3 heads when they challenged it. Like, how dare you challenge me?
Oh my God.
And my call. So he is absolutely arrogant. The NBA does believe that he is the guy who gets the call right the most out of any of their guys. So is that arrogance deserved? I don't know, but I do know that it rubs many people the wrong way in terms of just interacting with him within the game. So,
Well, I have a bit of a regret. I was at game 4 in Minneapolis for the Denver Nuggets, and a few seats down, in the front row there, courtside, was Jimmy Goldstein.
Yeah.
And Scott Foster will run in warmups on the sideline to get loose. And Jimmy Goldstein put his hand out, and Scott Foster gave him a little five, low five. So as Scott ran by me, I put it out jokingly, and he hit it as well. And I did not want that connection with Scott Foster.
Hey, but I think they won 3 of the 4 games they played with him refereeing in the playoffs. So
Yeah.
maybe you turned the tide for the Wolves in that regard. So
the other one was the ball came to me during the game, and I grabbed it and I held it, and I was going to give it to the ref, and I was just waiting, looking at the ref, but he was looking at somebody else and talking to somebody else, and Jokic was like, "Come on, give me the ball." So I gave it to the Joker. But the Denver series, I wish I felt candidly that maybe Denver was a better team when I was there for games 3 and 4. Their offense is so efficient sometimes, but I think it's a miracle. Do you think the Game 7 win is the greatest in Wolves history?
I do. I absolutely do. I mean, obviously there's not many that you can measure up against, but certainly Game 7 against Sacramento is probably the other one. But to put it in, you're on the road against the MVP, the reigning champions. You're down 20 in the third quarter, and to roar back the way that they did and really just break that team in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
I've never seen the Wolves do anything more impressive than that.
Yeah.
I just thought that, and I still, right now, I have chills going down my spine thinking about the steal from Conley, the pass to Nas, the find to Anthony in the corner and dropping it. And then the amount of Timberwolves fans that were in that arena
I couldn't believe it. I heard it. Yeah.
It was incredible. Amazing. Yeah. So I think that moment, clearly number 1 in Timberwolves history, just the significance of it and the belief in that moment that, hey, this team can win the championship, even though it did not. That is the apex of this organization to date. I think it's not even close. Yeah.
Do you think the injury to Chris Finch, the knee injury, affected the play of the Timberwolves?
Not too much, I don't think. Honestly, I think the Conley injury was more. I think by the end of that series against Dallas, he just really was dragging that foot around, the Achilles, the calf. It was really struggling for him. And he was the one guy who was the other kind of creator of offense other than Ant. And so him being slowed down, I think, really had a big impact on their ability to compete with Dallas. But certainly there were awkward times from the coaching perspective with Micah Nori having to be the one that talks for Finch in the game and things like that. But Finch was still right there, second row, deeply, immersed in everything that they were doing, talking to the players all the time, really trying to kind of be involved. And so it may have had a slight impact on how they played, but it's hard to say it when they beat Denver in 7 games, and they had 7 full games to get used to that. And then, they played Dallas and it didn't work. I think it was much more the Conley injury and just more of a experience mismatch with the Mavericks than a coaching situation.
Right. I think my thoughts, I'm not sure. I like the attitude of everybody that it was no problem, no issue. I just know sometimes Finchy will quickly call a timeout, get on the court, call a strategic timeout, maybe make some changes on the court, but it is what it is. And it's fine. Monte Morris was someone I was very excited about. You mentioned Mike Conley with the injury. Never clicked with Monte Morris. So I view him as a better player than Nickeil Alexander-Walker, even though I love Noah. But he never clicked, and I'm not sure why. It happens. You come in after the trade. It doesn't always work. He wasn't particularly healthy coming over. Why didn't Monte Morris work?
Yeah, it's a great question, Craig. And I always wondered why. I do think that Finch sticking with an 8-man, 7-man rotation in the Dallas series did wear on the guys as well. I
Yeah.
think they were tired by the end of it, and I think putting in one more guy in would have made sense. And Monte Morris makes a lot of sense to me against that matchup with Kyrie and with their creators that they have on Dallas. I think that what I could glean from Monte Morris coming in from Detroit in the trade was that he was much more hesitant as an offensive player than he normally is,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
he came to a team that was rolling,
Yeah.
that they had great chemistry. Even though they needed offensive help, like it was clear that that was the weakness of the team, I still think that he had a hard time finding his place in the pecking order. And even, we saw it even in the playoffs in a couple of the brief stints that he had, open shots that he's passing up, and moving the ball. And there was a reluctance overall to him that he just didn't seem comfortable. And so I think that was a concern for Chris Finch as the playoffs went on, because he shot a good percentage, but he just didn't take many shots. And he wasn't, Finch was constantly telling, we need you to be more aggressive. We need you to be more aggressive. And I think Monte had a hard time deciding when do I go get my own shot, and when do I get it to Ant or to Nas or to Cat or to whoever else I'm surrounded with. So just seemed like there was just never an opportunity for him to really settle in and feel good about running his game. And I think that cost him a chance to play in the playoffs.
So the offense was not as good as the defense. We had the number one defense. Our offense was good at times, but that was the question mark, the turnovers. I have my thoughts on, not everyone has the great floor game. Jaden McDaniels, Nas, they'll turn the ball over. Ant will turn the ball over. Cat will turn the ball over. In some ways, we did cut down on our turnovers in the playoffs, but of course, in the last few minutes, we had some key turnovers. How does John Krawczynski, how do you improve the offense for next season? And what do you think coach is going to do to improve the offense?
Yeah, I think, I thought Nas Reed had a very telling quote after the game. I asked him, hey, why didn't it work out against Dallas? Like, what was the main thing that got in the way of you guys competing at the level that you wanted to and extending the series? And he said, I think we need more brains. And it was just,
more higher IQ, smart,
yes,
like the Kyle Anderson type thing, or
correct. And I think that, what that represented, and I think you and I both have saw this throughout the season, is this is a team that played with a lot of skill and athleticism and used their physical prowess to try to beat you. And there was fewer games where they could outthink you. And I think Dallas just outthought them.
Yeah.
And so what they needed in this series was a bunch of really smart guys who knew how to break down that defense and get to spots on the floor, move the ball, do things that would create much easier looks for them.
Yeah.
And they just could not figure it out. Ant couldn't figure it out.
Right.
Nas couldn't, like a lot of these guys. And that I think will come in time with a lot of them. I just think that's experience and understanding the game. But I do think that the hope is if you keep this team relatively together going forward, that their aptitude for the game, their understanding and feel for it is going to be much better next season than it was this season, especially with Ant when the ball is in his hands so much. I think he improved a lot as a decision maker as the season went along, but still has a long way to go to get where they need to really dissect those kinds of game plans.
Yeah, so Ant is obviously special, and I put pressure on him prior to the playoffs, and I said we'll go as far as Ant takes us, kind of comparing it to the Dwayne Wade championship when he won his first one against Dirk Nowitzki. Dwayne Wade kind of did everything. But I was really, really pleased with Ant for the most part, that he is understanding the double teams, not as phased now with the traps. And, of course, in my opinion, he keeps improving his jump shot, which is not easy because I don't think he came into the league as a great jump shooter, and he keeps working on that, which is tremendous. A couple questions about Ant with Luka. Do you think he learned anything from Luka because Luka is so savvy and crafty? Was there any interaction with them? Did they talk after the series? Do you know any of this stuff or not?
Yeah, Ant left the court after Game 5 without doing a lot of the handshakes and stuff, and I do think that's just who he is as
competitive
guy. Ticked off that it didn't go the way that he wanted. But he did meet up with Luka behind the scenes. Shared a handshake and a hug and all of that. There's definitely a respect that Ant has for Luka because Luka just absolutely disemboweled them for 5 games. Like he could do whatever he wanted, and I think Ant saw that and absolutely respects it because there's nothing that he could do to stop it. Now, what can he take from that is going to be interesting because I do think that in some ways Ant can learn from Luka's savvy approach, the way that he just makes decisions at the last second and keeps defenses guessing. That said, let's just be honest, like Luka is one of the very best offensive players that has ever played this game. And he is entering his prime and is just remarkable with his feel, with his ability to get wherever he wants. Like Ant uses his physicality to do what he wants. Luka uses body angles, puts a guy on his hip and puts him in jail back there, and then does whatever he wants with the lob pass or with the shot. And so I think that there are some things that Ant can take from Luka, but then there's going to be other things where it's like, look, this guy is a unique individual all himself. Like you said, though, Craig, I agree with you in terms of, I think we saw Ant take some real strides in the passes that he was seeing, the ability to find the guy in the corner, the understanding of where guys were going to be and what he could do to pass them open, like a good quarterback who throws a guy open. I think he made good strides there, but I want to see him develop a little bit of a lob pass. That would be nice with Rudy. He cannot do that at all. And Luka used that as like the main weapon to absolutely crush the best defense in the league. And the Wolves just didn't have guys outside of Mike Conley who could do that. And I think it was a real issue for him and for the offense in general.
I saw Mark Cuban without hesitation say, Luka's better than Dirk, and I'll tell Dirk that. Because I guess because Dirk was more one-dimensional, scoring. But Luka, I mean, the passes, it's just kind of like Jokic sometimes where you got him trapped and then he whips it in the corner for a 3. Are you picking Dallas against the Boston, or what do you think?
You know what? I think I am going to pick Dallas, Craig, because I will say that I think Boston is better equipped to match up with Dallas, just in terms of Tatum and Brown have been there forever. They've been in really big spots. They understand it. Then you have Derek White. You have perimeter defenders who are a little stronger. Like Jaden's problem against Luka was he just wasn't strong enough. And Ant wasn't ready for that either. He did what he could, but I think that they have guys who can bother Luka a little bit more. But I think Dallas's overall 1 through 7 is really underrated. I think if PJ Washington and Derek Jones Jr. are going to hit corner threes like they have all playoffs, I don't know what the answer is, because you have to give up something against the Mavericks. And if those guys are going to be at all reliable from that spot, I think Boston's going to have a hard time kind of matching up with that. And the other thing real quickly is that I trust the Mavericks late in close games more than I trust Boston.
Absolutely. Because of the two guys.
Yep. You'll see Tatum take those step back jumpers all the time. And sometimes they go in and it's great. Yeah. Dallas has so many more ways they can beat you. And if they can keep this close, I feel good about the Mavericks pulling those games out.
I agree. I'm picking the Mavericks, and I don't view it as that much of an upset, but maybe other people do. Plus, I have friends that are Boston fans, and they're obnoxious. They've been
Yeah,
obnoxious since the Patriots, and it's just they're obnoxious.
they need some adversity.
I wanted to ask you about this clip that people saw, and I want to know if you saw this stuff throughout the year. But the clip was slow-mo telling Cat to go to the corner,
Mm-hmm.
then pointing to Ant to pass over the head, and then setting the pick on Kyrie. They're away from the ball, setting picks, which Rudy does all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know. I guess I didn't see slow-mo all the time telling Ant where to throw the pass, which is a good thing if Ant can see that before he shoots. Were you surprised by that, or is that something you saw all season long?
I think that's like the most, let's say, exaggerated or outsized example of that. Certainly, like the way that he orchestrated that whole possession.
Yeah,
I don't know that we saw that all of the time during the regular season.
right.
So I think that was the height of it right there. But I do think that Kyle Anderson's value to this team was very much, bringing some of the brains to the operation that were needed. Now we could get frustrated with his lack of shooting. I do think that when he had to play small forward versus power forward, it was a much harder situation for him a lot. But when in terms of that kind of feel for the game, that ability to not only quarterback the offense when the ball is in his hands, but also make things happen when he was off the ball like that, I think that is why Finchie talks so highly of him. I mean, if you were to ask Finch, he'd adopt Kyle as his son if he could. Like I think he's just like he is Finch's favorite guy. He will go to bat for him the whole way. And that's why, and it's those kinds of situations. That's why Finch loves him so much.
Will he be on the team next year?
I was surprised a little bit, Craig, in the exit interview about how much Kyle Anderson talked about wanting to be back. Like, I think he understands the financial crunch this team is under. And I think for a lot of the season, there may have been a thought of, well, this is my last year here. They're not going to keep me. We're going to have to go somewhere else. And that's the way of it. But when he had a day to think about it and then started to look at his options, I think, and reminisce on the season in this situation, he said that he had an appreciation for Finch because he believes that Chris Finch values his unique skill set as much as any coach he's been with. I think that means a lot to him.
Right.
He also mentioned how his son is on the autism spectrum and that he's gotten great education care in Minnesota, and they are using that. They're going to weigh that in their decision as well. So I think it's really going to come down to how great of a chasm is there between what the Wolves can offer and what he's going to get elsewhere.
Right.
I think at the start of this last season, you'd say, Kyle Anderson's going to get $9, $10, $12 million a year next season. No problem. But he did not have a good season. And so there's a possibility that there won't be many suitors out there that, he'll have to, be faced with, maybe only taking a couple $1 million more to go somewhere else than Minnesota. In that case, I could see him staying. I absolutely could. The market could dictate it to keep that door more open than I thought it was going to be.
Monte Morris under contract for next year. Is it was a 2-year deal or not?
No, he's up this summer as well. And so
that's right.
That'll be interesting as well, whether it's him or they got to get another point guard in here.
Yeah.
How they do that, it will be a tricky one.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you about some of the offseason moves. And I will say, just going back to the offense, my opinion, Rudy should touch the ball sparingly on offense. Now, I know what they like to do, and they do a switch and they get some fouls on Luka, but it's too much an adventure down low. I know it helps his attitude, improves his defense when he gets a touch, but I would use him sparingly on offense. That's just me. Mm-hmm. Oh, and before I forget, speaking of Rudy, what did you make of that whole Draymond thing? Because I was like a lot of people, our friend Dan Barrero, it was just like ridiculous that Turner Sports, and I know front office people there, and I gave him crap. I texted my buddy. He's a clown. He's a
Yes.
clown, and he was so childish with his criticisms of Rudy. It was so personal. And I wanted him just to say, quit talking about basketball. Just admit my name is Draymond Green and I hate this guy personally. I mean, just be a man and say you hate him. But he was such a. Anyways, what are your thoughts on Draymond? And I love the story about the Wolves refusing to get interviewed.
Yeah, I think it's clear that TNT and even other networks look at Draymond and say this guy we think he can be the next Charles Barkley. And when his playing career is done and when Chuck is ready to retire, he can slide into that loudmouth kind of role and keep it going. But what we learned in this series was he is no Charles Barkley because he does not have the sense of humor,
correct,
to make those cutting criticisms land the way they need to.
There's something lovable about
Yes.
Charles Barkley. There's nothing lovable about
Correct.
Draymond Green.
Yes, and I honestly thought that show inside the NBA is the greatest thing ever. From an analyst, post-game, pre-game show in any professional sport. It's so good. And I thought that they harmed their integrity, they harmed their product by not only putting Draymond in that position, but then allowing it to continue to happen when it was clear that he just had an axe to grind against Rudy and against Cat a little bit as well. I thought it was terrible.
Yeah.
And I applauded the Wolves for saying, no, we're not going to participate in your show. You cannot, there's going to be consequences for this kind of thing happening.
And Draymond wasn't there the next game, the game 5 in Minnesota. Was that a direct result of the Wolves?
So I don't think so, Craig, but I'm not sure. I haven't confirmed that. I think that I heard that it was his contract was just for the first 4 games of the series. And so no matter how it went, I think that may have been the end, but I would have to confirm that. I don't think it was a case of the Wolves saying, no, we're not going to do it. And then TNT saying, okay, we can't let this happen anymore. But I can't rule that out either. So I haven't spoken to anyone in authority about that yet.
With Father's Day right around the corner, what do you give the man who has everything? Oh, it's easy. You give him an experience he'll never forget. You give him Omaha steaks because a world-class dad deserves a world-class steak. I had the greatest dad ever. Very funny, brilliant. He'd fly through the crossword puzzle in the morning. And we loved buying Omaha steaks. We'd make them on the grill, listen to some Sinatra, maybe some Nat King Cole. It's called living. Well, the Father's Day experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to put a smile on the big guy's face this summer with hand-selected gift packages starting at just $89. Just go to omahasteaks.com and use promo code KILLBORN at checkout for an additional discount when you shop gourmet gift packages for Father's Day. With Omaha Steaks, the possibilities are endless. Endless flavor, endless variety, and endless value. Truly, they have perfected more than the steak, and your dad is guaranteed to love every bite. Order now and send Dad unforgettable gift packages starting at just $89 with promo code KILLBORN. Go to omahasteaks.com and use promo code KILLBORN to get an exclusive saving. Shop for unforgettable gifts that are guaranteed to make Dad's day. Because if there's one thing Omaha Steaks knows, it's that dads want steaks. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code KILLBORN at checkout to save on exclusive packages starting at just $89. Proud of you. Off-season moves. Any chance? Now, they probably wouldn't. You'd probably be pretty tight-lipped about it. I would think Tim Connolly would be very tight-lipped. Mm-hmm. Any chance that they would entertain trading Cat?
I mean, I think there's a chance. One thing that has become clear to me, both in the exit interviews publicly and in private conversations with a lot of the decision makers around this, including both ownership groups and all of that, whatever decisions they make are going to be geared toward what they think can sustain this competitiveness. We had a lot of discussions during the season about the luxury tax, about the financial constraints that are coming in, and what is that going to dictate some of their decisions. And would they trade Cat just to alleviate some of the financial burden from their books? And from what I can gather, this team has done enough in their eyes to merit that they are going to make their decisions on competitive aspects and not financial ones. So if they do trade Karl Anthony Towns, it would be for a reason that say whoever we're getting back, whatever is coming back to us, is going to make us either more versatile, better defensively, just different around Anthony Edwards, to allow us to what we think can take the step from conference finals to finals contention. It will not be, hey, we got to pay too much money, we've got to get rid of Cat and alleviate it that way. So I believe, Craig, that I think that they're going to run it back again for the most part with this group. But if they do make a trade, I think it will be competitive reasons and not financial.
So I'm a Cat fan. I always like to tell people I'm an NBA fan for 20 years prior to the Wolves coming into the league. So when we trade Ricky Rubio, our favorite player, I root for him no matter where he's at. Obviously, so happy for KG when he went to Boston and won a championship. I was happy for Kevin Love. The only guy I didn't really like was Stephon Marbury, so I didn't really care about him. But if we traded Cat, I would be happy for him and root for him because I like his game, although I have issues with his game. So when you say, the scoring, I did want to run it back after last year when I saw how we played at Denver in Game 5. And we did run it back. And you can never tell how a Jaden McDaniels is going to do offensively, if he's going to become consistent. But we need a third scorer or at least more shooting. Mm-hmm. So with that, because we're not going to re-sign Jalen Noel. I was high on him a few years ago, the scorer. But I think in free agency, you hear rumors like last summer, they wanted DiVincenzo. He went to the Knicks. They couldn't afford him.
Yes.
We can't afford much in free agency, right?
No. Yeah. It's they have no salary cap room. Just given the Cat, Rudy, and Ant contracts, they don't have much room. They don't have room for like mid-level exception types deals without it costing an incredible amount of money.
Right.
And this is all what this collective bargaining agreement is designed to do. It's designed to inject parity into the league. And the league wants teams to have to make hard decisions and have a hard time building anything more, so that you can't have the dynasty teams anymore, and that, the talent can be distributed around the league a little more evenly. And so that is, yes, the Wolves do not have, they would have to either hit on a draft pick, which they're drafting 27th in a terrible draft. I don't see that as being a viable option, or make a trade.
Who would they? You haven't heard any rumblings. Would they trade Jaden McDaniels to get somebody? Or
so I think when you look at the season that Jaden McDaniels had in the regular season, and you go into the playoffs and you say, yeah, is he going to make the leap? Is he going to be good enough offensively to justify this contract? Would that be a carrot that they could dangle to try and get someone else? And I think that there probably was discussion about that, or at least consideration of it, but he really played well in the playoffs.
He sure did.
And showed a lot more offensive versatility than I thought he had. I loved Craig when he would drive and the little dump offs to Rudy in traffic. Yeah. Sometimes he forced it and would have a turnover, but he seemed to be as effective passing to Rudy as almost anybody on the team. And I thought that was a side of his game I didn't see. And so all that to say is, I think that his position on this team is more deeply rooted after the playoffs than it was beforehand.
Right.
I'm not going to say he's untradeable. I'm not going to say it would be impossible for him to go somewhere else, but I think that there would be a much higher reluctance today than maybe even there was at the end of the regular season to trade him.
Right. So from my standpoint, there is a missing player, and I don't know who it is. And I don't know if you have a young player. I don't think there's anybody. It's not Leonard Miller. That's not. I haven't
Yeah.
seen him play, but it's not. I want a ball player like a Monte Morris, or probably a better version of Monte Morris. I want a guard because I like the cerebral play and the passing and the floor game and the savvy. And I don't know who it is, but I think I said last year we need a shooter. Now I'm expanding that to a ball player who can shoot, passer shooter. And I don't know who it is, but I don't think just running it back throws me off. And last year I wanted to run it back. It's just so easy for Kyrie and Luka to score. I need another guy, and I don't know how we're going to do that.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a conundrum. I look at, is a Jordan Clarkson.
Oh, now why have I heard that name? Because I mean, I've heard that name, but I thought you said we can't afford that.
Well, so that's the thing is like I don't think they can afford it just as is. So is there some sort of deal that could be made that brings in him? I think it's a very long shot. I'm just saying we're talking about players that would fit that mold.
I see.
Of what you and he's like that, and he's technically available. So I agree with you though in terms of I think that a secondary creator is really important. Now, I guess the one thing that you could, if you're into the cross your fingers and say a prayer type of thing, can Jaden McDaniels become more of an off the dribble guy? Maybe, but that's a huge leap. That's a big leap of faith to have. And so, but yes, somehow, some way, and I don't know what they're going to be able to do to do it. They have to add a secondary creator to take some of that pressure off of Anthony Edwards, and so that Mike Conley, you don't need him as much as they absolutely needed him this year.
Yeah, because you can't expect Mike at 37 next year to. He was, and I'm a huge fan. I remember prior to getting him, when we had D'Lo, I was like, people would say, "Well, who do you want as a point guard?" I said, "I don't know, but I want a young Mike Conley." And then
100%.
And then we got Mike Conley,
Tyus Jones, right? Like,
Oh, that's right. That's your guy, Tyus.
Yeah.
Tyus.
Yep.
Wait a second. Darius Garland. They said they might trade him if they keep Donovan Mitchell. There's no such thing in the NBA, is there? Where you know how the Vikings are able to manipulate the contracts with the signing bonus and reconstruct. And I think I heard Tim Duncan took less in San Antonio to keep everybody there. Can they do something? Can the big contracts, Rudy and Cat's contract, be manipulated or reconstructed where they get a Darius Garland or a Jordan Clarkson or not?
No, not as is it not existing. So, like for instance, your guy Harrison Smith has taken some pay cuts over the last couple of years to stay. And essentially tearing up the current contract and going with the newer one. That's not available as a mechanism in the NBA. What is available, Rudy will be up for an extension this summer. You could extend him. Now, could he, like Mike Conley, who went from, I think, $22 million this year to $11 million to stay for 2 more years, could Rudy say, I really like it in Minnesota. I want to be here over the long term. I also understand I'm getting a little older and I have to do some things to accommodate and allow this team to continue to grow. Will I stay here for, right now I'm making $40 million. Would I take a major pay cut going forward to make it easier to bring in someone like that? That is possible, because, not to get too in the weeds here, but next season they're going to pay a huge luxury tax bill. There's no question. But doing that once is okay. Like, it's not the end of the world. It's when you stack those seasons 2-3 in a row.
Did Golden State do that, stack a few or not?
Yes, they did. Yes. Okay. And that's one of the reasons that one of the reasons they traded Jordan Poole additionally to all the drama that was there, they had to get off of that long-term contract because they were just paying way too much in luxury tax. But they did do it for several years in a row because they had a new building, they had championships, they were printing money. They could afford to do that. The Timberwolves won't be able to afford to do that for 3 years in a row like Golden State has. And so so they can do it for a year, but then if they could somehow get Mike Conley and Rudy to come down on their salaries by a significant amount, maybe that does give them a little more wiggle room to bring in someone else that after this next season, they can distribute the cash in ways that makes it not the be all end all that it could be. So there are mechanisms, but it's very complicated and a lot of things have to happen in order for that to work out.
And when they pay the luxury tax, that's Glenn Taylor paying it, correct?
Correct.
Okay, we're going to wrap it up. Final question here for you. The ownership fight. What's your prediction on that?
I wish I had a clear idea. I really honestly don't. You talk to both sides and they're incredibly confident in it. I can tell you that here's how the process will work. This is definitive. They have chosen 3 neutral arbitrators. They have put their briefs together to submit and have reviewed. They are going to have opportunities to depose each other in these hearings. It's probably not going to happen till much later this summer. I don't think that there's going to be any sort of resolution until September on it. So this is going to drag out for a while. We have talked at The Athletic to several independent legal experts, and they have reviewed the contract. And in general, they believe that the legal side of this seems to skew a little bit more towards Lori and Rodriguez, like that the language of it, unless they are missing something, figures in their favor in terms of if they just go by the letter of the contract, it's probably good for Rodriguez and Lori. I think what Taylor will argue is a little more in the weeds in terms of they've missed some payments. They don't have the money. They've borrowed a lot of it. There's going to be questions about their financing and all of that. And then that will be up to an arbitrator to decide on, and also ultimately the league. They're going to be the ones that have to approve this if Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lori prevail in arbitration.
Yeah, and I follow a little bit, and I get rumors from people and stuff, but Glenn has money. Do you know if the league, what the league wants, or have you heard anything? Do they want Glenn or Glenn Taylor's estate to keep it, or do you think they want Mark Lori and A-Rod, or you haven't heard anything?
They've been incredibly quiet on that front to this degree, to this extent publicly, because I don't think that they want to be drawn into trying to put their thumb on the scale, either from a public sentiment point of view or from a legal point of view. I do think that, in talking to representatives with Lori and Rodriguez, they feel like they have a lot of support from the league. You talk to Glenn Taylor and he might say the same thing. And so I think that the league is being intentionally cagey about what they prefer, just because they want to let the whole process play out first.
But do you think it's even possible? Let's just say that Mark, Lori, and A-Rod win arbitration, then it goes to the league and the league says no. Is that even possible?
I think it's possible. It's possible, but is it likely? Yeah, probably not.
Right.
Because they're going to, what Mark Lori and Alex Rodriguez can say is, we have a contract with Glenn Taylor, and the arbitrator has deemed us to have followed through on the contract exactly as how we said. And so how can you, as a league, say that contract is now no good? Okay. The only thing that the league could say is that, hey, we have looked at your finances and we have reservations about your ability to run this thing over the long term. And so that would lead us to say, we know that Glenn Taylor is liquid. We know that he has the money to do this. we're going to stay with Glenn Taylor. But what Lori and Rodriguez have said is that they have the money, that their limited partners are very deep pocketed as well, and that they will come in with all of the financial resources they need to make this thing happen. So it will be a compelling approval hearing if we get to that point, because I do think that the league will want to see everything that they have, and Lauren Rodriguez will be happy to show that to them.
The controversial owner's suite that was built for A-Rod and Mark Lowry, have you been inside of it and had a drink?
I've been inside of it. I've had a drink in there. Very nice. It's a really nice room, I will say that.
A-Rod invited me to have a pregame drink if I had gone to the Dallas series, which I did not. I did say I will, when I come out, I'll have a pregame drink with you as long as I can bring my boombox. I want to be in control of the music.
Yes, probably a good idea. And the suite is right next to the media room. And so when they're having fun in there, we hear the thumping. It comes through that brick wall, I can tell you.
That's funny. All right, brother. That was a blast. So much. It's such a great season, and it was fun to talk to you about it. I know it was a fun season for you to cover the Timberwolves. Best
season in my 20 seasons so far. Incredibly fun. The locker room was great. The coaching staff was great. Front office, all good to deal with. Disappointing how it ended, but to see them having real stakes and to see the city or the state really get behind them the way that they did, a lot of fun, because you and I have both been probably made fun of over the years, Craig, for kind of our devotion to investing in this team, and now they are the cool thing again, and that's really fun to watch.
These are the Ant years. It's going to be fun. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's our show. We'll see you next time. And remember, young people, I'm proud of you.
I love the life gorgeous. Its torso is so tight.